The five-star restaurant gleamed under crystal chandeliers, each prism casting dancing shadows across mahogany walls adorned with African art pieces that spoke of heritage and pride. The Grandview had become the crown jewel of Atlanta's dining scene, where old Southern money met new black excellence in a display of power and prestige that few establishments could match. Mocking laughter echoed across the banquet table, sharp and cutting like broken glass against marble. The sound carried across the room with deliberate cruelty, designed to wound and humiliate, to remind someone of their place in a hierarchy that valued appearance over substance. A young black woman in an elegant evening gown hung her head low, her natural hair pulled into an intricate updo that had taken hours to perfect. The burgundy dress she wore had been rented for this one night, a chance to prove she belonged in spaces like this. Now, wine stains marred the fabric like accusations of her unworthiness. Her trembling hands clasped together in her lap, dark skin against dark fabric, trying to become invisible in a room designed to be seen. A man in a simple work shirt stepped forward from the shadows. His presence commanded attention despite his humble appearance. The fluorescent kitchen lights had given way to crystal chandelier glow, illuminating the silver at his temples and the wisdom lines around his eyes. His calloused hands, weathered by years of honest labor, moved with surprising grace as he calmly placed a glass of water on the polished table. He looked up, his voice deep and steady yet commanding, the voice of a man who had seen storms and stood firm against them. "She's with me." The entire table froze, as if time itself had stopped. At the head of the table sat a young black woman with softly curled hair that caught the light like spun silk. Alana Mercer's ice-cold eyes, usually so controlled and calculating, widened with something between shock and recognition. Motionless except for the rapid rise and fall of her chest, the silver necklace gleaming against her deep brown skin trembled slightly with her breathing. The heirloom piece, passed down through generations of Mercer women, seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. It was the moment that brought the entire room to a standstill, a moment that would reshape destinies and reveal truths buried for 15 years beneath layers of success and carefully constructed walls. But to understand the weight of those 3 words, to comprehend the earthquake they would cause in the carefully ordered world of Atlanta's elite, we must go back 12 hours earlier to when the day began like any other. Darius Cole stood in his modest apartment kitchen in southwest Atlanta, the morning sun painting golden stripes across worn linoleum floors that he had installed himself 5 years ago. The apartment was small but immaculate, every surface cleaned with the same precision he brought to his work. Family photographs lined the walls, generations of Coles who had built their lives on hard work and integrity. His grandmother in her Sunday best, his parents on their wedding day, his late wife Jasmine holding baby Naomi, her smile radiant even as cancer ravaged her body. At 35, his hands told the story of a working man who had never been ashamed of honest labor. Each callus had been earned through years of fixing air conditioners and refrigeration units, keeping Atlanta running through sweltering summers that could kill and unexpected cold snaps that caught everyone unprepared. The scars on his knuckles spoke of machinery that fought back, of late-night emergency calls when businesses stood to lose thousands in spoiled inventory, of being the man people depended on when systems failed and panic set in. "Daddy, look!" 7-year-old Naomi bounded into the kitchen, her hair styled in neat cornrows adorned with colorful beads that clicked musically when she moved. She held up her latest crayon drawing with the pride of a master artist unveiling a masterpiece. "I finished it, the one I've been working on all week." The drawing showed a rainbow arching over 3 stick figures holding hands. Despite the simple style, there was something profound in the way the child had captured connection. The figures leaning toward each other, their stick figure smiles radiating joy. She had used every crayon in her box, layering colors with surprising sophistication for her age. "It's our family under the rainbow, see? You, me, and—" She paused, her small finger pointing to the third figure drawn with particular care, wearing what looked like a silver necklace. "Someone who makes you smile. Someone who's coming soon." Darius chuckled, the sound rich and warm like honey over grits. He knelt down to his daughter's level, his large hand gently ruffling the edges of her cornrows. "You never stop dreaming, do you, baby girl? Where do you get these ideas?" "Daddy's never alone," Naomi declared with the unshakable confidence only children possess. Her dark eyes, mirrors of his own but holding her mother's spark, sparkled with certainty. "I'm always with you. And someday, someone else will be too. I can feel it in my bones, like Grandma Ruby says." "Speaking of Grandma Ruby," Darius said, pouring cereal into her favorite bowl, the one with cartoon characters dancing around the rim. "She called last night. Said she had a dream about water and silver. You know how she is with her dreams." "Grandma Ruby says I got the sight," Naomi announced proudly, climbing onto her chair at the small kitchen table. "She says I can see heart threads, the invisible strings that connect people who are meant to find each other. She said Mama had it too, before she went to heaven." Darius felt the familiar ache at the mention of Jasmine. 5 years gone, but Naomi kept her alive in conversations as naturally as breathing. "Your mama did have a way of seeing people's hearts," he agreed softly. "She saw good in everyone." "That's why she loved you," Naomi said matter-of-factly, spooning cereal into her mouth. "She saw your biggest heart even when you tried to hide it. She told me in a dream. She said you saved people before I was born. Said you were a hero who didn't want anyone to know." Darius's hand instinctively went to his shirt pocket, where he kept a small leather notebook, worn soft from years of handling. It was his most precious possession besides Naomi. Inside, on the first page, was a signature he treasured above any paycheck or award. The ink had faded slightly over the years, but the words remained clear. "To Darius Cole, the man I owe my life to. Watch over them. Victor Mercer." He traced the signature with one finger, a daily ritual that kept him grounded. Victor Mercer had been more than Atlanta's most successful black businessman. He had been a friend, a mentor, and in his final years, a man haunted by a debt he could never fully repay. "Daddy?" Naomi's voice pulled him back. "You got that faraway look again. Were you thinking about the water story? The one you never tell me all the way?" "Just remembering an old friend, baby girl," Darius said, closing the notebook. "Someone who taught me that real strength isn't about being the richest or the most powerful. It's about being there when someone needs you. Like when Marcus's dad's store freezer broke and you fixed it for free because they couldn't afford to lose all that food. How did you know about that? Marcus told everyone at school that you're a hero. He said his dad cried when you wouldn't take any money." Naomi beamed with pride. "That's my daddy, fixing things and fixing hearts." Across the city, in the heart of downtown Atlanta, where glass and steel reached toward heaven like modern prayers, Alana Mercer sat in her office on the 42nd floor. The view stretched across the city, from the golden dome of the Capitol to the endless sprawl of suburbs. This was her kingdom, built on her father's foundation, but expanded through her own brilliant mind and ruthless determination. At 27, she was the youngest black billionaire heiress to ever run a Fortune 500 company. Mercer Enterprises had started as a single soul food restaurant in the 1960s, her grandmother's recipes bringing comfort to the civil rights workers who planned freedom rides between bites of cornbread and collard greens. Now it was an international hospitality empire with properties on 4 continents. Her office was a study in contrasts. Modern minimalist furniture against walls holding her grandmother's cast-iron skillet in a place of honor, her father's first dollar earned framed next to a Bloomberg terminal, displaying real-time market data. The only personal photograph on her desk showed her at 12 years old, standing beside her father, both of them smiling despite visible bandages and bruises. Her ice blue contact lenses, a choice that had sparked countless think pieces about Black identity and power, scanned contracts with mechanical precision. The contacts were armor, she had decided long ago. They created distance, made her harder to read, harder to manipulate. In a world where young Black women were expected to be warm and accommodating, Alana had chosen to be glacier cold and immovable. "You can't be soft and be successful," her father had told her once, though something in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "The world will eat you alive if you show weakness." Her assistant, Keisha Williams, knocked softly on the glass door. Keisha was everything Alana wasn't: warm, approachable, from humble beginnings in College Park. She wore her struggle like some people wore designer clothes, with a mixture of pride and self-consciousness. Her parents ran a small beauty supply store, and she was the first in her family to graduate college. "Miss Mercer, the Grandview restaurant is ready for tonight's banquet. The international partners have all confirmed attendance. Mr. Ward from London, Ms. Ross from Dallas, Mr. Kruger from Johannesburg, Mr. Tanaka from Tokyo, and Mr. Santos from São Paulo." Alana touched the silver necklace at her throat, her most treasured possession. The locket had been her grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations of Mercer women. Inside was a secret she rarely examined, but always carried. Photographs that reminded her of a night she'd tried to forget and a debt that could never be repaid. "Make sure everything is perfect," Alana commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known failure. "Tonight's dinner will seal the biggest international deal in company history. We're talking about bringing Black excellence to global markets in ways my father could only dream of." Keisha nodded eagerly, her notebook clutched to her chest. "The catering team has prepared a fusion menu, traditional Southern cuisine with international influences. The sommelier has selected wines from Black-owned vineyards around the world. Every detail reflects the company's values." "Good." Alana turned back to her contracts, then paused. "And Keisha? You'll be sitting at the main table tonight. It's time you learned how these deals really get made." Keisha's eyes widened with gratitude and terror in equal measure. "Miss Mercer, my dress. I'm not sure I have anything appropriate for. Wear the burgundy one from the company wardrobe. It'll fit you perfectly." Alana's tone brooked no argument, but there was something almost kind in it. "You belong at that table as much as anyone else. You've earned it with your work, your dedication. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." "Thank you, Miss Mercer. I won't let you down." "You won't," Alana said with certainty, "because you understand what this company represents. We're not just about profit. We're about proving that Black excellence isn't an exception. It's an expectation we exceed every single day." That afternoon, as Atlanta's heat shimmered off concrete and the city hummed with the energy of 5 million souls going about their lives, Darius received an emergency call. His supervisor's voice crackled through the phone, urgent and stressed. "Darius, I need you at the Grandview restaurant ASAP. Their entire HVAC system just failed and they've got some massive event tonight. They specifically asked for you, said you're the only one they trust with their system." Darius looked at Naomi, who was coloring at the kitchen table, her tongue poking out in concentration as she worked on another drawing. His mother was at her church committee meeting and wouldn't be back for hours. The babysitter had canceled that morning with the flu. "I'd have to bring Naomi," he said, already knowing what the answer would be. "No sitter available." "I don't care if you bring the entire neighborhood, just get that system running. The Grandview is one of our biggest contracts. They're talking about a party worth millions riding on this. The owner said if we can't fix it, we lose the contract permanently. Come on, baby girl, Darius said, grabbing his toolbox with one hand and Naomi's coloring supplies with the other. Daddy has to save someone's dinner party. An adventure, Naomi exclaimed, bouncing on her toes with excitement. Maybe we'll meet someone special. I feel it in my bones, Daddy. Today's gonna be important. The threads are all shimmery today like Christmas lights. Darius smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm, not knowing how prophetic her words would prove to be. He loaded his tools into his old but well-maintained pickup truck, the same one he'd driven for 10 years. Naomi climbed into her booster seat, already pulling out her crayons. Daddy, tell me about the Grandview. Is it really grand? It's one of the fanciest restaurants in Atlanta, Darius explained, as they drove through neighborhoods that shifted from working class to wealthy. The kind of place where one meal costs more than our grocery bill for a month. Why would anyone pay that much for food? It's not just about the food, baby girl. It's about showing the world you can afford it. It's about power and connections and making deals. Sounds lonely, Naomi said sagely. I'd rather have McDonald's with you than fancy food with strangers. The Grandview restaurant buzzed with preparation like a hive of elegant bees. Crystal glasses caught the afternoon light, creating tiny rainbows across starched white tablecloths that had been imported from Ireland. Servers, dressed in crisp uniforms that cost more than most people's entire wardrobe, polished silverware to mirror perfection, while florists arranged centerpieces of white orchids and African violets that had been flown in that morning. The restaurant's manager, Philippe, a nervous man who sweated despite the cool temperature, met them at the service entrance. Thank God you're here. The system failed an hour ago. We have the mayor coming tonight, international investors, the works. If we can't maintain temperature. I'll handle it, Darius assured him, already assessing the situation. The Grandview system is complex, but I installed half of it myself 3 years ago. Where can my daughter sit while I work? She can use the small dining room. It's away from the main preparation. Philippe looked at Naomi with a slight frown that Darius caught but ignored. Just, please keep her out of sight. Some of our early guests are already arriving. Darius worked quietly in the corner, his tools spread around him in organized chaos. The HVAC system was more complex than most, a state-of-the-art setup that required both technical knowledge and intuitive understanding. Years of experience had taught him that machines, like people, had personalities. You couldn't force them. You had to understand what they needed. Naomi sat nearby on a cushioned bench, her coloring book open, creating worlds with wax and paper. She hummed softly as she worked, the same lullaby Jasmine used to sing. See, baby girl, Darius explained as he worked, making it a teaching moment like he always did. These machines are like people. They need care and attention. You can't just force them to work. You have to understand what they need, what's hurting them. Like friendship, Naomi said sagely, adding purple to her rainbow. Grandma Ruby says you can't force friendship. It has to grow naturally, like her collard greens in the garden. As they worked, early arrivals began to gather in the bar area. A group of wealthy patrons, their designer clothes and expensive watches declaring their status like neon signs, settled into leather chairs with cocktails that cost more than Darius made in a day. One man, Preston Ward, held court among them. His British accent, acquired during his Rhodes Scholarship years at Oxford, added an air of sophistication to his words. He was the kind of black man who had forgotten where he came from, who wore his success like armor against his origins. His suit was custom Savile Row, his watch a Patek Philippe, his entire bearing designed to distance himself from the very community that had raised him. The problem with Atlanta, Preston was saying, gesturing with his martini, is that it can't decide if it wants to be a real international city or remain stuck in its provincial southern roots. Too many people here still think success means staying connected to the neighborhood. They don't understand that real power requires separation. His audience murmured agreement, each of them refugees from their own humble beginnings, each having traded authenticity for acceptance in rooms like this. Preston's voice carried across the room as Darius and Naomi walked past with tools. The moment he saw them, a working man in a uniform shirt and a little girl with beaded cornrows, his expression shifted to one of disdain. "Excuse me," he called out loudly, his tone dripping with false concern. "I think you're in the wrong section. The service entrance is around back. This area is for guests only." The group erupted in laughter, the kind of laughter that wasn't meant to amuse but to wound, to establish hierarchy, to remind someone of their place. Darius kept walking, his jaw tight, but Naomi stopped. She turned to face Preston with the fearlessness of a child who hadn't yet learned that some battles aren't worth fighting. "Daddy, they're wrong," she said, her small voice carrying across the room with the clarity of truth. "We're exactly where we're supposed to be. The threads led us here." "It's okay, sweetheart," Darius whispered, gently taking her hand. The weight of his toolbox seemed heavier suddenly, pulling at muscles that had nothing to do with physical strain. Preston persisted, emboldened by his audience and the cocktails. "This is a 5-star establishment. I'm sure there's a McDonald's down the street that would be more appropriate for a family outing. Maybe they have a play place for the little one." More laughter rippled through the room, each chuckle a small cut. One woman, dripping in diamonds, actually took out her phone to record the interaction, already composing the caption in her mind about keeping spaces exclusive. Darius's jaw tightened slightly, the muscle jumping beneath his skin, but he continued. Toward the kitchen area. He had learned long ago that dignity wasn't about responding to every insult. It was about knowing your worth regardless of who recognized it. Jasmine had taught him that before she died, holding his hand and making him promise to never let Naomi see him diminished by other people's small minds. "But Daddy," Naomi started to protest. "Not now, baby girl. We have work to do." As they passed the main dining room, a scene unfolded that would prove pivotal. Keisha Williams, wearing the borrowed burgundy dress that fit like it had been tailored for her, moved through the space with nervous energy. She was practicing where she would sit, how she would hold her wine glass, trying to inhabit a space that felt too grand for her body. The dress was beautiful, designer label, silk fabric that caught the light, but she wore it like armor that didn't quite fit. She had been rehearsing introductions under her breath. "Pleased to meet you." "Yes, I've been with Mercer Enterprises for 2 years. Yes, I graduated summa cum laude from Spelman." A server, rushing with a tray of wine glasses for the pre-dinner reception, turned too quickly. The collision was inevitable, red wine arcing through the air like spilled blood, splashing across Keisha's borrowed dress in a pattern that looked like violence. "Oh God! Oh no!" Keisha gasped, the sound wounded and desperate. She frantically dabbed at the stains with cocktail napkins that seemed to make it worse, the wine spreading like accusations across the silk. The same group of patrons watched from their perch in the bar area, their laughter now finding a new target. Imani Ross, a steel magnate from Dallas whose family had built their fortune in the New South but forgotten their roots in old struggle, commented loudly enough for everyone to hear. "How embarrassing. Someone like that doesn't belong at a table like this anyway. You can take them out of the hood, but—" She let the sentence hang, the implication clear as crystal. "At least we know the help when we see them," another added. "Even dressed up, there's something about them that just doesn't fit." The laughter that followed was crueler than before, fed by wine and privilege and the need to push someone else down to feel higher. Keisha's face flushed with humiliation, tears forming in her eyes despite her desperate attempts to blink them back. Her hands shook as she tried to clean the stains, making them worse with each frantic motion. Darius paused, his eyes flashing with something cold and sharp. For just a moment, the temperature in the room seemed to drop, as if his anger had physical weight. His hand tightened on his toolbox handle until his knuckles stood out in sharp relief. But he said nothing, simply continued on his way, Naomi's small hand in his. "Daddy, why are they being mean?" Naomi asked, her voice carrying the bewilderment of a child confronting cruelty for the first time. "That lady is crying. We should help her." "Some people forget what really matters," Darius replied softly, his hand instinctively touching the small notebook in his pocket. "They get so caught up in showing off their success that they forget we're all human. They forget that every single one of us started from somewhere." "But you always say being successful means lifting others up," Naomi protested, looking back at Keisha, who was now trying to hide in a corner, using her clutch purse to cover the worst of the stains. "That's right, baby girl. Real success, real power. It's about protection, not persecution. It's about making sure everyone gets a chance to shine. Remember that." "I will, Daddy. And when I grow up, I'm gonna make sure nobody ever feels alone at a table." They made their way to the kitchen area where Darius could work on the main HVAC unit. The kitchen staff, mostly black and brown faces who knew what it was like to be invisible in spaces like this, nodded at him with respect. They knew he was one of them, someone who worked with his hands, who understood that dignity came from labor, not leisure. Mr. Cole, the head chef, an older black woman named Miss Patricia, greeted him warmly. "Thank the Lord you're here. We're dying in this heat." "I'll have it fixed within the hour, Miss Patricia. You just keep making your magic." "And who's this beautiful princess?" Miss Patricia knelt down to Naomi's level. "I'm Naomi. I'm helping my daddy save the dinner party." "Well then, you need proper fuel. How about some of my special cookies? Made them fresh this morning." As Naomi enjoyed her treat and colored at a small table the kitchen staff set up for her, Darius worked on the system. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, diagnosing the problem quickly, a failed compressor combined with a software glitch in the new digital controls. It would take precision and patience to fix without shutting down the entire system. 8 hours later, the transformation was complete. The Grandview restaurant had become something out of a dream, a space where crystal and candlelight created an atmosphere of otherworldly elegance. The African art pieces on the walls seemed to glow in the ambient light, ancestors watching over the gathering of the powerful. The dining room had become a showcase of black excellence, successful entrepreneurs, artists, and business moguls from around the world. It was the kind of gathering that would make magazine covers, that would be talked about in business schools and boardrooms for years to come. Every detail had been perfected, from the precisely folded napkins to the temperature now holding steady thanks to Darius's repairs. Alana Mercer entered like winter itself, elegant, untouchable, and commanding immediate attention. Her midnight blue evening gown, designed by a celebrated Nigerian designer, flowed behind her like liquid night. The fabric caught the light with each movement, revealing subtle patterns inspired by traditional Adinkra symbols, wisdom, strength, and transformation woven into the very threads. Her silver necklace, the family heirloom, rested against her collarbone like a declaration of heritage. She moved through the room with practiced grace, greeting international partners with air kisses and firm handshakes. Each gesture was calculated, each word chosen for maximum impact. This was her arena, and she was its undisputed champion. "Mr. Tanaka, so pleased you could make it from Tokyo. I trust your flight was comfortable?" "Miss Ross, that new facility in Dallas is exceeding all projections. We should discuss expansion. Mr. Kruger, the Johannesburg property is ready for your inspection next month." Around the main table, the evening's key players took their seats. Preston Ward, still preening from his earlier performance, positioned himself prominently. Imani Ross adjusted her diamonds to catch the light just right. The international partners settled in with the confidence of people who had never doubted their right to be anywhere. At Alana's right hand, Keisha sat trembling in the wine-stained burgundy dress. Despite her best efforts in the bathroom with soap and water, the stains remained visible, dark accusations against the fabric. She had tried to excuse herself earlier, but Alana had insisted she stay. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alana's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a silver blade. "Tonight, we celebrate the future of global commerce. Tonight, we show the world that Black excellence isn't just an American story. It's a global revolution. Mercer Enterprises stands ready to lead that revolution." The table erupted in polite applause. Wine glasses clinked with the sound of crystal bells, and conversations flowed in multiple languages: English, French, Portuguese, Swahili, and Yoruba, mixing in a symphony of international business. The first course arrived, a fusion of Southern comfort and international sophistication. Shrimp and grits reimagined with Japanese techniques, collard greens elevated with French preparation, mac and cheese infused with truffle oil from Italy. Each dish told a story of transformation, of taking something humble and making it magnificent. Everything seemed perfect until Preston Ward, emboldened by wine and an audience, decided to assert his perceived superiority. He had been watching Keisha since she sat down, noting how she held her fork, how she hesitated before each sip of wine, how she tried to shrink into her chair. "I say," Preston announced loudly, his acquired British accent more pronounced with each drink, "I do hope we're not expecting everyone at this table to maintain the same standards of presentation." His eyes fixed pointedly on Keisha, whose face immediately flushed crimson. She instinctively pulled at her dress, trying to hide the stains that seemed to grow more visible under his scrutiny. "Some people," chimed in Imani Ross, her diamonds catching the light as she gestured dismissively, "simply weren't born for tables like this. It's not about race. We're all Black here. It's about class, breeding. The difference between new money and no money." Her laughter was sharp as broken glass, designed to cut deep. Several others joined in, their chuckles creating a chorus of cruelty. "You can see it in the way they carry themselves," someone added. "Like they're afraid the silverware might bite them." Keisha's hands began to shake violently. She started to rise from her chair, whispering, "I should go." "I'm so sorry, Miss Mercer, I should—" "Nonsense," Preston continued, emboldened by the crowd's reaction. "But perhaps in the future we should establish a dress code. Can't have people in what is that? A thrift store special? Ross dress for less? The clearance rack at Target?" The table exploded in cruel laughter. Several phones appeared, ready to capture the humiliation for social media. The hashtags would be brutal. Hashtag wrong table, hashtag know your place, hashtag not ready for prime time. Keisha's breathing became rapid and shallow, tears forming in her eyes, despite her desperate attempts to hold them back. Her shoulders shook with the effort of not sobbing out loud. She felt like she was drowning in their laughter, each chuckle pushing her further under. Alana watched silently, her expression unreadable behind those ice-blue contacts. Something flickered in her eyes. A memory, perhaps, or recognition of a moment that echoed through time. Her fingers moved unconsciously to her silver necklace. That's when the air in the room shifted. Darius Cole appeared beside the table as if materializing from shadows themselves. He had been in the kitchen, checking his work one final time, when he heard the familiar sound of cruelty masquerading as humor. He had left Naomi with Miss Patricia, who was teaching her to fold napkins into swans. He moved with quiet confidence, his work boots silent on the marble floor despite their worn rubber soles. In his calloused hand, he carried a simple glass of water. Nothing fancy, just clean, clear water in a plain glass, the kind of basic human kindness that required no qualification or pedigree. Without asking permission, without acknowledging the shocked faces around him, Darius calmly placed the glass of water in front of the trembling Keisha. The gesture was simple, but profound, an offering of comfort in a moment of crisis, a reminder that she was human and deserving of care. The laughter died instantly, like a record scratching to silence. Preston Ward's face turned red with indignation, the vein in his forehead beginning to pulse. "Excuse me, but this is a private dinner. Staff are not permitted in the dining room during service." "I don't know who you think you are, but—" Darius looked up, his dark eyes meeting Preston's with steady calm. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of mountains, the depth of oceans, the certainty of sunrise. "She's with me." 3 simple words, spoken with such quiet authority that they seemed to reverberate off the walls, shaking the crystal in the chandeliers. The entire table froze. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the servers standing against the wall seemed to hold their breath, recognizing the moment as something significant, something that would be talked about in the kitchen for years to come. Preston sputtered, his face cycling through shades of purple like a bruise forming in real time. "This is outrageous. This is completely inappropriate. Do you have any idea who we are? Security." "Someone call security immediately." But Darius didn't move. He didn't flinch. He simply stood there, one hand resting gently on the back of Keisha's chair, his presence somehow filling the entire room. There was something about him, not menace exactly, but a quality that suggested he had faced down bigger threats than a table full of wealthy bullies. Alana sat perfectly still at the head of the table. But something had changed in her ice-blue eyes. They were fixed on Darius's face with an intensity that bordered on recognition. Her fingers unconsciously moved to her silver necklace, tracing its familiar weight like a rosary. "You can't just walk in here," Imani Ross snapped, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. There was something about this man that unsettled her, like looking at a calm ocean and knowing there were depths that could swallow ships whole. "This is a private business dinner. The management will hear about this." "Oh, but I can walk in here." Darius's gaze shifted to her, and she actually leaned back in her chair. "I'm the reason you're not sitting in 90-degree heat right now, sweating through that designer dress. I'm the one who keeps places like this running so folks like you can play your power games in comfort." Keisha looked up at Darius with wonder and gratitude, mascara tracks on her cheeks like war paint. But he kept his eyes on the table of powerful people who suddenly seemed much smaller. Preston stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I demand to know who you think you are. What gives you the right to interrupt our dinner? This is a gathering of international business leaders, not some what?" Darius asked quietly, dangerously. "Not some working-class family reunion? Not some gathering of regular black folks who forgot where they came from?" The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. For the first time, Darius smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. It was the smile of a man who had seen too much to be impressed by wealth, who had learned that character was the only currency that really mattered. "I'm someone who keeps his promises," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Someone who understands what real worth looks like. Someone who knows that every single person at this table, no matter how high they've climbed, started with someone believing they deserved a chance." Alana's breathing became shallow. There was something about his voice, something familiar that sent chills down her spine. The way he stood, the quiet confidence, the protective stance, it stirred memories she thought she had buried beneath years of ice-blue contacts and calculated coldness. "This is absurd," Preston declared, but his voice cracked slightly, betraying his uncertainty. I'm calling the police. This is trespassing, harassment. Go ahead, Darius replied calmly. But first, you might want to ask your host who she thinks belongs at this table. All eyes turned to Alana. She sat frozen, her fingers now gripping her necklace so tightly her knuckles were white. Her mind raced through fragments of memory, rain on windshield wipers, the sound of metal grinding against concrete, cold water rushing in, strong arms pulling her to safety, a voice saying, "I've got you, little one." You're safe now. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Phone cameras captured every second of the standoff. Keisha had stopped crying and now looked between Darius and Alana with growing amazement. Finally, Preston broke the silence with a nervous laugh. Well, I never. This is the most ridiculous. Enough. Alana's voice cut through his bluster like a blade. Everyone turned to her. She was still staring at Darius, her eyes wide with something between shock and recognition. I think, she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, we need to pause this dinner. Alana, surely you're not going to let this maintenance worker? I said enough! Her voice cracked like a whip, and Preston actually stumbled backward. Everyone, please! I need a moment to address something important. She rose slowly from her chair, her movements careful, deliberate, as if she might shatter if she moved too quickly. Sir, she addressed Darius directly for the first time, her voice trembling slightly. Would you mind telling me your name? Darius Cole. The name hit Alana like a physical blow. Her hand flew to her necklace, gripping it so tightly that the silver edges bit into her palm. Several guests noticed her reaction and leaned forward with curiosity. Darius Cole, she repeated, testing the name on her lips like a prayer she had forgotten how to say. From Riverside? The one who worked with Cole's cooling and heating? That's right. The one who... Her voice broke slightly. Who was working the night shift 15 years ago? June 15th, 2009? Slowly, deliberately, Darius reached into his shirt pocket and withdrew the small, worn leather notebook. The sight of it made Alana's breathing catch in her throat. I believe, Darius said quietly, this might mean something to you. He opened the notebook to the first page and held it up for her to see. Even from across the table, Alana could make out the familiar handwriting that had haunted her dreams for years. Her father's distinctive script, the way he curved his letters, the bold strokes of his signature. The entire table strained to see what was written there, but only Alana could read the words that changed everything. To Darius Cole, the man I owe my life to. Watch over them. Victor Mercer. Alana's legs gave out, and she collapsed back into her chair. The color drained from her face as memories flooded back like a broken dam, each one more vivid than the last. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice breaking. Oh my God, it's you. It's really you.